Good evening. Welcome to the Derry Town Council Budget Review, Thursday, April 20th. Please stand for the pledge. Council Katsoukaris, please lead us.
Thank you, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roll call. Council Chericello is unable to make it this evening. Council Spencer is on Zoom.
Good evening.
Good evening. Council Katsoukaris.
Good evening.
Council Flood.
Good evening.
Council Ganesi.
Good evening.
Council McEachern.
Evening.
And good evening from the chair. I guess we'll jump right into this and start off with the town clerk budget. Ms. Tina Guilford will be presenting.
Good evening. For those that are not familiar, I am Tina Guilford. I am the town clerk. For those of you that don't know, the town clerk is responsible for keeping the records of the town, everything from minutes to vital records. We're responsible for dog licensing. We also do a lot of services that are at no cost to the taxpayer. We do hundreds of notaries a month, notarial services for residents, and we seem to be the point of all phone calls coming into town hall and directing them to the department where they need to go. So since we are responsible for quite a lot, including a lot of election stuff on top of that, I have put in my budget a full-time employee, which is what I have now myself. And instead of 2 part-time employees, I would like to have another full-time employee. So our deputy currently works 32 hours and does already have health insurance. So this is for a roll-up to retirement and the additional hours. I'm also going to be expanding the hours of the town clerk. So the town clerk is currently open 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I come in most days between 7:15 and 7:30, and inevitably I have residents already waiting, looking for services, because they come in at 7 a.m., they register their car, and then they want to license their dog, and they want to go to work. So the entire building opens at 7 a.m. except the town clerk's office. So I'm going to be changing that and opening at 7 a.m. as well. And so our increase is mostly personnel related. I know the other night you guys had some questions for our police chief about dog licensing, and he didn't have those answers for you, so I'm here to give you those answers. So the slide is as of April 18th. I do have updated numbers as of close of business today. We have 3,772 dogs already licensed for 2023. And we have 3,131 unlicensed. Dog licensing years run from May 1st to April 30th. As you can see, we are already trending upwards for the year. Civil forfeitures will be issued in June. I will come before the council again to issue that warrant so that any residents who do not register and license their dog, the fines starts at $25. There's a $1 a month late fee. And the fines don't go away. It's not like if you wait a whole year, those fines go away. You need to pay the old fine and the new fine. So it can get quite expensive. Also, our ACO is doing a phenomenal job, and we are following the process now as laid out in RSA. So sadly, you will end up in court. It is a time-consuming process, and I would prefer not to do that. So please If you're a senior resident, it's $3. If your dog is spayed or neutered, it's $7.50. If it is unaltered, it is $10. If you have 5 or more dogs, it's $21 for a group license. And that's all I have to speak about that. If you have any questions on that part of the budget.
Questions, comments? Okay.
Is that the entire budget? We're all done?
That's for the town clerk portion, yep.
Town clerk, all right, so.
All right.
So, Dave, I have a question under salary, where the town clerk's an elected position. You have line item 190005, longevity pay.
I believe that's,
I would almost rather see that in her base salary, because,
I think the longevity pay is not for me.
it says town clerk.
It's town clerk's office.
It's for the
It's
office.
It's for the office of town clerk.
So the,
It's for the deputy.
All right. Well, then maybe that should say deputy then, okay. I might be reading it wrong then, all right. 'Cause I just want to make sure, as an elected official, it should be part of your base, and I just want to make sure you've got the correct compensation.
Yes. Thank you.
And maybe I'm reading it wrong, and maybe I'm off a line.
You are.
And I could be. That's all right. I'm done.
anything else?
No, I can vote the bottom line if you want.
Sure, go right ahead.
I'm going to move the bottom line for the town clerk and elections department of, let me see, revised. Oh, no, just the town clerk, 188,448.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilor McGuckern, second by Councilor Katz-Corris to move the bottom line. On the motion, Councilor Spencer.
Yes.
Councilor Katz-Corris.
Yes.
Councilor Flood.
Yes.
Councilor Granessi.
Yes.
McGuckern.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Motion passes 6-0. Bottom line.
Okay, so part 2 of my budget, elections. So there is an increase in personnel, and I know it looks a little strange that we're going from 3 elections to 2 elections in the fiscal year. However, one of those elections is a presidential primary, and based on instruction from this council previously, I was told to budget and work a presidential primary as if it is a presidential election and to expect turnout. So that is what it was priced at. At this time, we have no date for the presidential primary, and there are multiple bills in Concord to move the September primary. There's a bill to move it to May, there's a bill to move it to June. So I have no idea if that's gonna suddenly be moving into this budget, or if it will still be in the following year's budget. And this is budgeting for 1 polling location. If the council wishes to change that, obviously, additional polling locations come with additional costs. For personnel, there's additional costs if you go from 1 polling location to 2 polling locations to 3 polling locations. And this is for staffing for a presidential level election. So I just wanted the council to be cognizant of personnel costs. There will also be additional costs for poll pads. What we've done as a town is we have purchased the poll pads that we would need for not only our local elections, but for state level elections and primaries. A presidential election and a presidential primary, they come around once every 4 years. So to purchase additional poll pads seems to be a little excessive when they're then going to sit idle for 4 years. It is technology. I don't want to put too much of the town's funds into that, so we would need to lease them if we are going, you know, not only for a presidential election, we will need to lease a few, and they are budgeted in here, because I did budget for a presidential level election for the primary. But if we are going to have more locations, we may need to lease more, we may need to buy more. That'll be a conversation you guys will need to have. Hospitality costs, providing our poll workers with breakfast, lunch, dinner, water, snacks. Those prices have gone up a little bit. So that is reflected. Also making sure we have enough for, again, presidential level staffing. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Before anyone comments, so as far as the additional polling locations and the expenses incurred with that, for those who don't know, we are having another election subcommittee meeting on May 1st. We've already had one this past week. So if everyone's okay with it, I would say, barring any other comments or questions you have, if we move the bottom line, and then anything additional in the future, we can just do supplemental appropriation as needed, based on the outcome of the subcommittee meetings.
Yep.
That's
Well,
fine.
that
with
would
me.
make,
As long as everyone's okay with that, but
well, that would make perfect sense, Mr. Chairman, and, you know, as we'll discuss later with the,
Yep.
you know, with the capital improvements, we can have it there in supplemental appropriation, so I think that's absolutely the appropriate thing to do. So if there are no other questions, Ms. Spencer?
Council
No, I
Spencer?
was going to ask the same question about if we were going to plan for supplemental appropriation, so I'm good.
Cool. Then I'm going to move a bottom line of 81,201.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Council McGeckran, second by Council Katsouris to move the bottom line of $81,201. On the motion, Council Spencer.
Yes.
Council Katsouris.
Yes.
Council Flood.
Yes.
Council Granessi.
Yes.
Council McGeckran.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, Derry Public Library. Mr. Stern, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, councilors.
Evening.
It's been quite a year, again, for the DPL. Let's start on this lovely slide, which features a wonderful painting by a local artist, Corey Caputo, memorializing our award as 2021 NHLTA Library of the Year. And I will just recite our current mission statement, which is the Derry Public Library serves the community's evolving informational and cultural needs and supports residents' efforts to connect, explore, and grow. This lovely slide, I hope, is the last time I ever have to show this at one of these meetings. But the reason I included it here is because you can see this year, really, there was only one thing that had to do with the pandemic that was changed at the library, and that is we opened meeting room A again to the public. So our meeting rooms are fully open to the public at this point in time. Everything else is back 100%. As you can see, going back to the very earliest stages of the pandemic, the library has continued to layer on more and more services and offerings, and we are fully back, thank goodness. This timeline shows the milestones that we encountered this year and the things that we accomplished. I'm not going to dwell on this too much because I have some slides that follow which go into greater detail on some of these things. But you can see it was a pretty busy year for the library. There are a lot of accomplishments. So I'll start with our partnership with the New Hampshire State Law Library. This is something that I had mentioned to you folks last year that we had kind of in the works. It came together in May of last year, and we have been a partner of the State Law Library since that time, offering Westlaw access at the library, which is quite an awesome feature, an expensive one, which we do not have to pay for because we're a partner of the State Law Library. Our reference staff is trained now to offer legal reference assistance to any people who enter the library. It certainly helps that we have a couple lawyers on staff, myself included, but yeah, everyone is capable of offering legal reference assistance in the reference department. This slide might not be super exciting for most folks, but for me it was particularly exciting because it meant that the air handlers that had been in the library attic and mezzanine area were actually capable of being serviced for the first time since 1989 when they were put in place. There was one in particular where you can see that scaffolding in the center picture where we had a unit that was tucked up in the ceiling in our tech services room which required a scissor lift, anytime we wanted to just check it for some type of service. So to have this now is tremendous for us. Obviously, with the pandemic waning and hopefully disappearing in the rearview mirror, we were able to bring back our large in-person programming, which was heavily attended. Two on the left there were in October of 2022. The Jeff Bellinger program was over at the Derry Opera House. The Phantom of the DPL program, which we had to shift from the Opera House to the library kind of at the last minute, but it was still heavily attended and very successful. We had a silent film accompanist, Jeff Rapsis, who was playing the score to the film, and it was really something else. We're going to be bringing him back again this year, hopefully at the Derry Opera House for that program. And then on the right-hand side, Author Fest just returned a couple of weeks ago, and it was, again, heavily attended. It was a great program to finally see back after 4 years. Yeah, it's been that long. I wanted to linger on this just for a minute. These murals were painted in the vicinity of the children's room. The one on the left by Karen Lincoln is near the entrance to the children's room, and it really leads people right in the door. You can see the books that are flying past that bike rack there in that second photo over. At times, people would not even know that we had a separate entrance, believe it or not. Now they know for sure that it is a children's room. The other mural over on the right-hand side was painted by Angela Gagne in December of last year. Includes a memorial for one of our trustees' children who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago. Children's room carpet replacement. Boy, you don't know how bad the carpet is until you actually compare it to the new carpet, and this was pretty stark. We were able to move all of the shelves ourselves to save money in that process. It was quite a task, let me tell you, but we were able to get through it, and now we have lovely carpet tiles in the children's room, which are going to make it much easier if we have to deal with any spills or other incidents. Really just a tremendous upgrade, and that was from the Expendable Maintenance Trust. This was paid for as part of the CIP this year. This slide just shows the variety of programming that we offer for all ages. It's by no means everything, but it just wanted to show a sampling of the types of programs that we offer regularly at the library, both in person and virtual. Looking ahead, as I like to do, there are definitely a few projects that we have in the works. One is going to happen a lot sooner than the others. That is the pollinator garden, which is the butterfly is representative of that. That is going to be planted in the vicinity of the McGregor stained glass window on the front of the building. Up in the top right-hand corner, the picture of the Opera House, again, indicates we're going to be bringing Jeff Rapsis back this year for his popular program. The parking sign symbolizes our just need to continue working on the parking situation at the library, because it's something that unfortunately just has not gone away. It's a good problem to have. A lot of people want to visit the library. There's not a lot of parking spaces. I'm going to be getting creative and working with some other town departments to see what we can do to address that issue in the year ahead. It's something that our strategic planning committee has identified as a high priority for us to be investigating. And then last but not least, once we alleviate our parking issues, we would really like to work on our mobile library services, in particular, some type of bookmobile for all ages in the community who are unable to get to the library. That's something that has been on my list of priorities for a little while now. Looking at the fiscal 24 budget, proposed bottom line 1,450, that should read 852, not 857. Apologize for the $5 discrepancy. DPL's FY23 was 1,409,543. Fiscal 24 reflects an increase of approximately $41,000. I guess it would be $309, approximately 2.93%. And the tail of these increases is predominantly due to something you've probably heard before in other meetings, the impact on utilities, global inflation, and the town-wide hike on health insurance rates. Any questions?
Questions?
Now, Mr. Chairman, this is a very straightforward, as, you know, per state regulations, the library is in and of itself its own entity, and while we can give suggestions, they're an entity unto themselves, both the Derry Library and Taylor. So I'm just gonna go ahead, unless Ms. Spencer has a question, to move the bottom line.
Council Spencer, anything?
No questions.
Okay, then I'm gonna make a motion to move the bottom line of $1,450,852.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Geckran, second by Councilor Granessi to move the bottom line of $1,450,852. On the motion, Council Spencer.
Yes.
Council Katsouris.
Yes.
Council Flood.
Yes.
Council Granessi.
Yes.
Councilman Geckran.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Motion passes. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, counselors.
Appreciate it.
Good to see
Good
you.
job, as usual.
I gotta catch the emu.
Those are always good commercials.
That's funny.
Good evening, counselors.
Good
Chairman
evening.
Foote. Thank you all for listening to me. My name is Jen Thielker, and I'm the director over at the Taylor Library in East Derry, and I'm here to discuss our 2024 budget.
And you
like to
brought an
start-
assistant?
Yes, I did.
For the
This is,
record.
So I'm Raymond Fontaine. I'm the board chair. So just here
Thank
to help
you.
out, maybe push a couple buttons.
yeah,
Just to make it official.
my tech support
Thank you.
for the night. Ray Fontaine. All right, so I'd like to start with some of our 2023 fiscal year highlights so far. In regards to programming, we have seen a record summer participation last year with numbers higher than they were back until 2010 in terms of both books read and participation. Our summer reading program is where we do the bulk of our programming. And high participation in that typically sets the pace for high participation in the rest of our programming. We've diversified our library offerings. The library has historically tended to host mostly programs for preschool-aged children. We now have something regular for every age group. We've increased our total programs and participation across the board with 174 programs last year for a small library. That's pretty impressive, if I say so myself. Below that, you can see the increase in our summer participation and our book checkouts to beyond pre-COVID numbers. So it's a more accurate representation of our normal volume. In terms of facility and resource highlights, we have made a strategic review of all of the library's resource, reviewing inventory, patron use of inventory, and purchasing books strategically based on that data, increasing the overall copyright date of circulating items by 4 years. We have finalized our front stair remodel in 2022. The library repaved the front walkway and replaced the stairs, which created additional issues with the library. The age of the library showed there was some damage to the sills. That has now been restored to its original glory. And one of the biggest changes is the library now has a new website. It's still at taylorlibrary.org, but it is more readily available information, searchable, and lists a more complete roster of library items. Here you can see our comparison for the most recent budget years. The biggest increases will be in the personnel, but it's still within range of our 2021 personnel requests. So some of the biggest changes to our budget, the first of which is the largest, is a standardization of our wages to meet national averages for the work being completed at the library, and hopefully to establish policy to standardize cost of living increases and eliminate some of the guesswork. Our people are our biggest assets. We could not operate without them, and we would like to compensate them appropriately and make the library a desirable employer and keep up with industry demands. The Derry Public Library, in collaboration with the Derry Public Library, the town received a Zoichel archival scanner last year, which has been fantastic at digitizing resources. I'd like to be able to increase hours to fully utilize that scanner and make an actual dent in digitizing our Derry heritage. We have a lot of important, unique pieces of information related to Derry's history at the library, and by scanning them, we'll be able to make them readily available to anyone in the town and beyond. We would like to increase our program budget to meet the demands of the public with more specific adult programs and additional literacy groups. We have established a contract for maintenance and recovery of our website to ensure that it remains accessible and secure. Establish collaborative relationships with local businesses, departments through programs and community events. So we have already taken an effort to reach out to community leaders and make the library, the Taylor Library, more present within other other town offerings. And then, as Eric stated, a general rise in the cost of supplies across the board. We have 2 capital projects that we would like to complete this year. The first of which is replacing the basement windowsills. As you can see on the right, the windowsills of the library are in direct contact with the ground. It's untreated original wood, so the goal would be to replace that with treated wood and then restore it to match the original exterior of the library. And then our carpet is also past its prime. It's over 15 years old, very threadbare, and has become a trip hazard at the joints. So if the library's budget is funded, we'd like to offer the following for the next year. So in addition to our regular program, a life skills fair, more collaborative projects such as the Big Read with the Derry Public Library, a kindergarten through 3rd grade family book group. We were approached to collaborate with the YMCA for additional story times, more non-book loanable items at the libraries, adult summer reading programs, special needs story times, the return of the infamous Genius kits, and more digitization of Derry records. And that's all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. No comment, though.
Yes,
It's kind of weird not to be the liaison this year.
it is. We've missed you.
Yeah, so scheduling wise, you know my circumstance of not being able to make the meetings because of
No hard.
my kids get in the way of everything, so.
We've upgraded on that.
Yeah. We had to dig deep and get him, but,
Come by anyways.
so, any questions or comments?
No, I can move the bottom line of the Taylor Library, 221233.
Second.
Okay, motion by Council McEachran, second by Councilor Flood to move the bottom line of $221,233.
Excuse me.
On the motion, Council Spencer,
Yes.
Council Katz-Corris.
Yes.
Council Flood,
Yes.
Council Granessi.
Yes.
Council McEachran.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank
Nice
you.
seeing you both.
It's involved.
Actually, nice seeing you all. All right.
Really?
Next up, we have Recreation. Mr. Fowler.
Done for the year now? He's the recreation director too, along with Public Works?
Yep.
There's a lot of hats that
Man of
go
many
under
hats.
Public Works.
Man of all tests.
All right.
All right. So, good evening. So this is a continuation of the DPW budget. We talked about 10 of the departments. There was a desire to look at the recreation facilities update at the same time that we talked about the recreation budget. So it's probably a good time to provide a brief update, and if there's any questions as far as the services that are provided by this division, certainly could do that. Just to kind of clarify again, I'm Mike Fowler, the Public Works Director. Parks and Recreation is under the umbrella of the Public Works Department. Kim Walsh is the Parks and Recreation Director. She couldn't be here this evening, so if there's any questions, I can certainly funnel those through and get back to the
So
council.
she'll blame you then?
That is correct, if there's any mistakes. All right. So first, I'd like to start with throwing some attention to the recreation budget for fiscal '24. Just as a brief overview, that coordinates with 10 plus or minus sports organizations, football, lacrosse, soccer, all the major ones, baseball, softball, all are doing very, very well, and we coordinate very well with each one of those youth sports. 100 plus or minus events and programs are organized annually. Those range all the way across the board, from some holiday celebrations to just some fun events that they have. They collaborate with some of our other groups in town, Derry Public Library and other locations, to kind of get some leverage and some multiplication of forces. In the division, the revenue stream is $148,056. Those are mainly programming fees for when you sign up for basketball. There's a nominal fee of $40 and some of the other sports and services that we provide. Expenditures in this division, $656,549. I did want to point out that in fiscal '23, all of the league's programs and events were fully operative. If you recall, talking about COVID, we had some severe shutdowns because of health concerns in fiscal 2021 and lingering into 22, but happy to report everything is back to normal, which is great. As I had mentioned earlier, the revenues are based on service fees and some trust incomes. We talked about that in the parks budget as well. So both Parks and Recreation has some income coming from the trust areas. The recreation budget also supports the summer concerts and fireworks. Those are in the budget for FY24. We have a very strong schedule of summer concerts. Folks really like those events, and we're happy to continue to sponsor those. And one thing I do want to point out, if you look at the expense and the revenue line items within the recreation division, a lot of times what you'll see is a correlation between, for example, if we have concession revenues, there will be an offsetting cost to purchase those items. And not that we're out there looking to make a profit on buying a soda or a candy bar, but it's there as a convenience when, individuals go to Galleons Beach or Don Ball Park. We want to be able to provide a, cold drink or something to nibble on, while they're there having a good time. So those are the main highlights of the recreation division, and I do have some additional slides. I don't know if you want to take care of the business of the bottom line on this, and then we can move into talking about the status of the rec bond and some of the other
we'll do
things.
that.
Okay.
First of all, any questions or comments from Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, Mike, so on the revenue side, I'm assuming the reason I'm seeing a bunch of zeros versus the revised 2023 is because we haven't hit that cycle in the year yet, and they're going to be Q4 revenues?
That is correct. And there's a reconciliation at the end of the fiscal year.
All right, yeah, because, obviously, I'm not going to see anything from the beach at this point, but,
Right.
There's bus trips and things of that nature, so they're going to start to trigger in the spring then?
Yeah, and one thing I did want to point out about bus revenues, one area that has changed since COVID, it's been a little bit more difficult to get large buses to take trips to, wherever. There used to be a number of trips. In the post-COVID world, it's very difficult to get a bus. We're exploring looking at permitting some smaller trips where we get like a 12 or 15 person van. So that may be a little shift, but we still want to provide the opportunities to go, to the different locations, multiple times, because a lot of residents really like those trips.
Yeah, okay. No, just more curious than anything. All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
No. Have you added any more senior trips? And
Well-
where are they?
Well, so that's kind of the discussion. We have been talking about, we try to listen to what the seniors are looking for. Many years ago, like you remember, they used to go to Foxwoods and
Yeah.
things like that. I think that has changed, and the demographics have changed. I know a lot of times they've taken trips to, like, meal, and then they go to visit someplace
Yeah.
and take a tour. I think they went to Salem, Mass one time.
Yeah.
They've gone up to Foster's in Kittery, or I think it's York, but somewhere up in that neck of the woods. So they're going to continue to evolve those, but the problem we're having right now is we are really struggling to get an affordable bus that makes it affordable for the seniors. So Kim and her staff are trying to recalibrate that, but what it may feature is a trip of 15 seniors or whoever signs up for the trip, as opposed to a bus load of 48. So stay tuned on that. We're working to try to, redo that so it's affordable for
Are you
everybody.
adding any new trips or anything like that?
I think until we
The
get.
people enjoy that. The
Yeah.
seniors call me and say, when is it gonna start and where are we going this time?
Yeah, so I would say, once we get this bus situation squared
Yep.
away, they'll start to advertise that. But if anybody has any suggestions, feel free to reach out to, the office and say, hey, let's try to go to.
We don't have an agenda or anything like
I
that?
think the schedule's been published for this year yet. But I
No.
know when they do come up, they come up online, and then obviously you can fill those by visiting the office or calling in to make a registration.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other questions, I'll just move to the
Question.
bottom line.
Wait a minute,
Sorry, actually, so with the post-COVID
James.
times now, the senior outreach, has the senior clientele stayed,
Yeah.
numbers stayed the same, or has it been a big drop-off because they just,
No, it's actually been, once we were able to reopen, say, for example, Vets Hall, all of the walking programs and some
Yeah.
of the active activities, those are back to full strength, which is wonderful. So we try to get those back online as soon as possible, and the staff did a really good job at kind of tapering them at the right time so that nobody was going to be at risk, but we're back to full strength.
and as far as communication with the senior residents, do we have any issues with that? Any kind of challenges that we're facing with that, trying to let them know?
No, I believe, we've opened up some other conduits through Facebook. I mean, we have a very active Facebook page, and that gets, sent around. I see it in multiple pages, so that's been very, very favorable. And even with our outreach through, this rec bond and trying to figure out what everybody was looking for, they got more responses from the seniors than I think they did from some of the other, demographic groups.
Good. Well, that's good to hear, that they're at least engaging,
Yeah,
I
for sure.
know.
so. Councilman McEachran?
Oh, okay. Questions, guys? Nope. I'm seeing no other questions. I'm gonna move the bottom line for recreation, 656, 549.
Second.
Okay, motion by Council McEachran, second by Council Katz-Corus to move the bottom line, 656, 549. On the motion, Council Spencer.
Yes.
Council Katz-Corus. Council Flood.
Yes.
Council Granessi.
Yes.
Council McEachran.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. So now we'll move into the recreation bond. And one area that I was prepared to talk about, I don't think we need to go and discuss any further, but the Parks Department, we went over their budget on Tuesday night. They are integral as well in maintaining the fields, doing the capital improvements, being involved in the regular maintenance. And as I had talked about, as we continue to build these nice facilities, we want to make sure that we have, the labor to take on and tackle and make sure that everything is in pristine condition. They do combat a lot of, vandalism and things like that, so that's going to be an ongoing activity. But obviously, just the simple basic things of keeping the fields mowed and lined, that really stretches their activity. I want to give the crew a lot of credit. This past week, everybody opened up on April 15th or earlier for their opening of all the sports, and all the fields came out in wonderful condition. We were able to support all of them. It was a great, weekend, Friday, Saturday. The weather was very favorable, so happy to get them all on their way. So I just want to give the Parks crew a shout out as well. All right, so let's go back a little bit in time here. In 2020, Town Council had requested that we perform a rec needs assessment study. And Dr. Bob Barcelona from the Department of Recreation Management for UNH had conducted that study. And it involved a number of different outreaches. We had meetings here. We brought in a steering committee, put out a bunch of surveys to find out what everybody was looking for. And it was a great process, and it steered us in several directions. They talked about some things ranging from enhancing Hood Park to trying to find additional recreational fields, particularly a 90-foot diamond and also a soccer field. They also looked at and discussed the potential of an indoor space. That's probably a little further down the road. And then just some general improvements for the department relative to where our labor and how much money that we spend to support that. So a copy of that study, if anybody's interested, is still online at the website for the Parks and Recreation Department. We've kept that up there for years just as a guideline that we've been following. But basically what it did was we had a number of workshops with the town council. And coming out of that, the town council approved, well, actually, let me take a step back. Before that rec study, the town council approved a $1.8 million bond in 2019. And that list of projects from initial, I've got a slide to show that, from the initial bond issuance to the point at which where we are now, that list had changed tremendously. But the council had expanded the Route 28 TIF district to include Hood Park, and that was an important funding mechanism. As I had mentioned, the recreation study was ongoing, and we completed that in March of 2020. We also expanded the Gateway TIF district to capture the northern segment of the rail trail, because that's also an important part of our recreation spectrum. And then some minor things were done. The council had appropriated just under $40 million for some field improvements. We took advantage when COVID shut down these leagues to upgrade, overseed, clean up some areas where some of the leagues had identified there were some needs, and that was really successful. And then we came back to town council on June 9th, 2020. So things were put into motion. So as I had mentioned, in 2019, the original idea of the $1.8 million bond was to completely replace the Alexander Carr Lodge at $1.5 million. Then we looked at some park structures to replace the playground at Alexander Carr, and looked at some initial outdoor fitness stations for about $100,000, and then talking about adding lights to a 60-foot baseball diamond that's adjacent to the splash pad. So that was going to be the purpose for those items. Well, as time went on, and I know this slide is somewhat difficult to see, it's got kind of a small font to it. The ideas changed through a number of different resolutions. So what we kicked off with was, here's the list, all right? We kicked off with some of the field sod and overseeding in 2020. We then went out and took a look at building a multi-use field at West Running Brook School. So there's a field there already. It's not in great condition, but we found an opportunity. We had design completed for about $75,000. The price tag to build it back when the design was completed was over $2.5 million. So that project is still sitting in your capital improvements plan, but at the time it was felt that that was infeasible based on some of the other needs. We also proceeded with the rail trail by council by a council resolution. In 2021, we completed from Hood Park up to North High Street, and that was an important connection that brings us right to the cusp of where it will cross the Exit 4A project. We also did a toddler playground at Donball Park. In 2022, Ryder Field was paved, and also, as everybody's aware, the Alexander Carr Skate Park. Some of the proceeds from this bond were used to cover that cost. So that's what's been completed thus far. Next, Hood Park. So we've gone out and had a design completed. A bid was put out last week. It was going to include, or does include, a new pickleball court, a new playground, a new structure for shade, kind of a pavilion type, a splash pad, a fountain in the middle of the pond for aeration and just some beautification, new lighting for the courts that are there. And so that was all put together in one package for somewhere in that range, if we figured, or we hoped, for about $500,000. There's an appropriation available for that. We put the bids out. We had 6 plan holders, and unfortunately, when we came back on Monday, nobody had put a bid in. And unfortunately, that's kind of the bidding world at this point, whether or not it's culverts and it's a hit or miss proposition. We're going to try to see if we can recalibrate the project and maybe do some of the work in-house and work with the actual vendors. So stay tuned on that timeline, but I do want to make sure that everybody's aware that we are still working actively to try to move forward on that project this year. The Alexander Carr Lodge, instead of doing a full-blown demolition and tear it down to the ground, the decision was made to take a more hard look at the bones of that building. And what we discovered was the bones are in pretty good shape. The exterior needs a little attention. So we have a contractor. We have 2 bids that came in, and we're going to proceed with some exterior renovations probably within the next 2 months, starting that up, and it'll go through the summer. There was $150,000 that was appropriated for that. Right now, it looks like the price is going to settle at about $80,000, and then we'll do some other interior work. So we're happy we have a contractor that we can line up on that. Vets Field, I was here, I think it was February 21st. Town Council had looked at, again, some modifications of use of that bond. We're going to partner with the Derry Diamond Association, softball, baseball, to install a softball fence. Right now, in Vets Field, there's a temporary fence that's been put up, I think, for the last 2 seasons to bring it back from what used to be a men's softball dimension of 270, 280. We're going to taper that down to 200. It'll be a galvanized chain link fence. We're working with a vendor to try to get that installed by May 6th. We're crossing our fingers that the weather holds up. With that, another project that will follow after the fence is put in, there'll be parking in center field. So one of the concerns that had come up was inadequate parking for vets in O'Hara Field. What we will end up doing is taking that open area and creating a parking lot, which should help alleviate some of the concerns in that area. That'll probably be 2024. This summer, fall, we're going to be looking at lighting upgrades, taking the existing lighting, which probably dates back over 20 years now, and converting that to LED. We have some pricing for that. That seems to be favorable. And then in conjunction with the league in 23, 24, depending on the timelines, we're going to coordinate with the league to look at some batting cages, scoreboard, dugout improvements throughout the facility, and I think that would really brush that up. At Alexander Carr, we're going to be looking at that playground that's at the base of the skate park. That, again, needs some attention. Probably won't kick that off until 2024. And then at Ryder Field, lighting upgrades. Again, one field is already lit. We're going to be looking to upgrade that to LED. And then the second field, known as Ryder 2, that field would be looking to put new light towers up there. So that's one of the last projects I think that we would be attending to. So that's kind of where we are. One area I did want to just highlight as far as the Hood Park master plan, these are all items that a separate subcommittee had put forward. Our plan is to implement all of these items. So again, I went over those. I won't review those again, but everything that had been identified by the master plan group had been incorporated into the bid that we had put out, but unfortunately not received any quotes for. All right. So those are an update. If there's any questions or comments, I'm certainly willing to address those at this point.
Anybody? Nope. Thank you.
Okay. No? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right. CIP.
Yeah, the council reviewed or received presentations from various departments about the CIP and the capital projects and the expendable maintenance trust. And so what we're requesting is, based upon those presentations, is the council to preliminary approve a budget for the expendable maintenance trust in the amount of $265,000 and the capital improvements program for $800,009. And then we'll carry those forward to the public hearing.
All right, so I'm trying to find it. Hold on.
So the capital's on page 514 and the EMT is on page 518.
Any questions, comments? No? All right, so I'm on 514. What was that, 514 was that one, Dave?
Yeah, page 514 is the capital improvements for $800,000.
Oh, there it is, okay.
And $9. Right.
No change. You want to move the bottom line?
Which one do you?
On 514, the 800.
I move the bottom line for the capital in the amount of $800,009.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Granessi, second by Councilor Katsouris, to move the bottom line, $800,009. On the motion, Councilor Spencer.
Yes.
Councilor Katsouris.
Yes.
Councilor Flood.
Yes.
Councilor Granessi.
Yes.
Councilor McGuckern.
Yes. I don't want Tina yelling at me.
Yeah. All right.
Turned it on. Turn the speaker on, Tina.
Be a good boy.
I am trying.
All right, and then we're gonna go on to the EMT. On page 518. Yep. 265. move the bottom line on that.
Oh,
Any
sure.
Questions, comments before we move that? No?
Nope.
No, pretty straightforward. I'll move the bottom line of 265,000, if, clarity, sorry.
All right, motion by Counsel McEachran, seconded by Counsel Katsoukaris to
boy.
move the bottom line of $265,000. On the motion, Counsel Spencer,
Yes?
Counsel Katsoukaris,
Yes.
Counsel Flood,
Yes.
Counsel Gracie.
Yes.
Counsel McEachran.
Yes,
Chair votes yes. 6-0. And then, what else we got?
Well, that's all the scheduled votes we have for this evening.
All right, and then, so I just want to mention this. So if the council is amenable, I would like to give the town administrator some direction in the veterans tax credit. I would like to go up on the veterans, combat veterans, $50 per year. And he can formulate a resolution and bring it back to us on Tuesday,
That'll be Tuesday, May 2nd.
May 2nd.
That's correct.
that's fine.
Yeah.
You want, would you like a motion
Well,
to
it
do
just
that?
needs no,
Oh,
it just needs direction,
once he
just
brings
a
it in.
consensus.
Yeah.
Counsel Spencer, do you have anything you want to add?
No.
No, I'm fine with that. I do just want to throw out there that, we have looked at overall veterans credits at this point, and those conversations will continue, but this is separate. I do realize that's been, I think we said several years since there's been any kind of increase, so I am fine with sending that forward.
Okay, thank
How
you.
many veterans received this benefit?
I'm going to defer that to the town administrator.
Let's see here. And we currently have 766 recipients.
700 and what?
766.
What qualifies a veteran to be able to get that money?
Ye-
Because my telephone's been ringing the last couple of days on the veterans.
Yeah, under the current system adopted by the town, it's the optional veterans credit. So you have to serve between certain periods of war, between World War I and the Persian Gulf, and also since May 8th in 1975, any other war or conflict in which the resident earned an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal or Theater of Operations Service Medal. They're also eligible.
Another thing is, I'm getting calls and it's making me think I'll have to bring it to Concord. Women are saying, a couple of women called me and said they were getting the veterans credit for many years from the town and it really helped, and her husband passed on. So once he passed on, she couldn't get it anymore, and she doesn't know if she can keep her house because of the tax. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, or is it gonna take legislation in Concord to change this?
Yeah, all the rules and options regarding the veterans credit are established by state statute in the state legislature. So any changes have to come from Concord.
But, is it worth checking into and looking, a woman living that has gotten the money for years, and then her husband passes and she no longer gets it?
Okay, we can take a look at that.
I'll have to look into it and check up on Concord and see what they say about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Town administrator, or whoever you are. Big boss.
Mr. Chair, may I just speak to Councilor Katsoukaris' last
You may.
question there too? So I've kind of, in going through the RSA, have numerous things that I might suggest we could look at the state level. So I can definitely add that to the list of things I hope to discuss with our state delegation when our legislative committee meets.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't understand a word she said.
She's going to bring it up to the legislative committee and talk to some of the legislatures
Oh,
and discuss it.
I'll check in Concord too.
Okay. All right. Am I missing something with the front row? I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Okay.
They look pretty happy. I
Just
think we
nothing better to
took
do
care
on a
of them.
Thursday night? Okay.
Chairman, in regards to the capital improvement plan, Dave, were you all set with the direction from us previously on the capital improvement plan then?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we look back to the flagged items back from a few meetings ago, there were a couple of questions. First was regarding the assessing. Councilman McKecken raised an issue about coefficient of dispersion. That's a measurement used by the assessing office. You always hear that you want to look at the percentage of assessment to equalized value. We have to be between 90 and 110%. From my perspective, a more effective measurement is the COD. So the COD measures if the equalized value average in town is at 94%. The COD measures how far dispersed the values are. So you have values out here and out here, you have more inequity. So they use a measurement, and the state uses a measurement, you have to be under 20. And 15 is the target, and currently Derry's COD is at 9.34. So we're under 10, which tells us that most of the values are bunched around the average, which means we have proportionality in our assessments. The other issue is regarding the capital reserve. As we discussed previously, the council decision of probably about 9-10 years ago removed most of the capital funding from the operating budget and develop a process whereby if you have funds left over at the end of the year, as far as unallocated fund balance, you can use that. As we develop the CIP, our target is to allocate about $1.5 million of capital improvements. That does not include our road program, which is already in the budget, nor does it include our lease payments on police cruisers, which is already in the budget as well. So for the last several years, we've met that target. For the last 2, 4, 7 years, we met that target twice, because at this point, back in up until FY19, we were not raising any tax dollars towards the capital reserve fund, the CIP. In FY19, we increased it to $250,000. And what we've tried to do since then, in any reduction in principal and interest payments for debt service, we've essentially transferred those dollars into allocation to the capital reserve fund. Our original recommendation within the FY24 budget is to fund it at $300,000, which is about $14,000 more than we did back in FY23, whereby there is some physical capacity available this year between what the voters approved for a tax cap and what we're recommending you look at for an operating budget. We would suggest the council consider increasing that $300,000 to anywhere between $600,000 and $650,000. The budget as presented by administration would have an impact of about 15 cents on the tax rate, and this would add another 6 cents to the rate. So the rate would be at $5.91, actually $5.92. So it's a little over a 4% increase as opposed to a 3% increase. Nobody enjoys tax increases. We totally understand that. The challenge we have is are really twofold. One is that once we return to typical inflation levels, then there won't be capacity under the tax cap to have more of a balance between the funds raised by taxes and the funds raised through the unallocated fund balance. The other issue is that as inflation eats away at every department budget, and our department managers have been incredibly responsible, not presenting budgets to the council, which increases every line item by 6%, because that's the rate of inflation. They've really looked at the budgets and attempted to target the areas which are really hitting us, like fuel, for example, and heating cost. Once inflation continues to eat away at the operating budgets, the amount of surplus available to fund capital improvements will be decreased every year. So we think it's responsible for the council to look at adding that or increasing the contribution from taxes for capital improvements up beyond where the $300,000 is.
So, yeah, we've been, you know, looking at this, and I know, Dave, you and I have discussed this, and I know some of the other councilors, I believe the number that we're looking at is the 650 number, and I'd like to see how that works out in the final presentation. That gives you, I believe, you know, when I do the math, it gives us a far more sustainable program moving forward.
It does.
And it will level the playing field. It actually shifts the balance closer to 50-50 than where it is now at 80-20. It provides a lot more stability going forward, helping all the capital improvement plans and basically levels the playing field. And when you do that based on where we were a couple weeks ago, and you go to that number, it pretty much equals on an average home in Derry of about $400,000. It comes to about $2.43, $2.50 additional every month. So it's basically, you know, not to minimize it because it's extra money, but it basically works out to be a cup of coffee. Based on where we started a couple weeks ago to do that number that we're looking at now. And for the stability of the town, for the long-term viability of the budget, I would recommend we go there, Mr. Chairman, or at least get a look at that and see where it comes out.
Okay.
And to keep the contribution to capital, either in the roads or the capital improvements program, $3 million is a lot of money, but our general fixed assets, of all the assets from the general fund, which the town owns and maintains, is in excess of $90 million. So what's essentially we're recommending is to look at about a 3% replenishment rate each year, which is very conservative, and that also goes to the credit to our department managers for maintaining their assets and as best they can. But as you know, vehicles wear out, buildings need maintenance or else they fall apart. So we think it's a responsible plan for the council to consider.
Okay. Thank you. So you're just going to present that next week? Right?
Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, yeah.
Yeah, so the suggestion is a Tuesday night when we go to public hearing, we'll give the council some options, and so if you think the plan is viable, then a motion may be in order to increase that line item in the OMO budget.
Well, I think we ought to increase that now as well as the veterans credit and see the full effect Tuesday night for the public hearing, right?
Right, well, we'll have those numbers for you. The veterans credit and also the different levels regarding the transfer to capital reserve.
I guess I'm only suggesting one level at this point in the veterans credit, so would you want a motion tonight just to do it?
Sure.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to have the town administrator add in the veterans credit as previously suggested by the chairman, and also change the formula for the capital improvement plan to include the $650 we just discussed.
Second.
Okay, so a motion by Councilor McGuckin, second by Councilor Granessi on the amendment. On the motion, Councilor Spencer.
Can I just ask, this is a clarifying question? This
Yes.
is just to change the budget right now. We're not voting are we voting these things in, or we are voting to
To have the
amend
town
budget?
administrator present them next week. So no, this is not going to be the official
No, this
vote.
isn't the final budget vote,
This
no.
is, this is
Just
the
wanted to, I
vote.
didn't think so, but wanted to clarify there, thank you.
Yes,
And
it's
yes,
more
my vote is
directional
yes.
towards the town administrator on what we're asking him to bring back to us next week.
Yeah, my apologies if it sounded like that. It's just so that we can get the final numbers looking right, Aaron. I'm sorry if that was misconstrued.
No, that's okay, I just wanted to clarify and make sure that everybody was on the same page. So yes, my vote is yes on that.
Councilor Katz-Corris.
Well, a question to the town administrator. I get this. So can I vote on it, or should I just abstain?
Well,
I get the veterans credit, so.
yeah, I have that direction, so if you do receive the vet credit, you may want to recuse yourself from voting at the final resolution, which will be on May 2nd.
Vote on it or abstain?
Tonight, you can vote, if you want to, you can vote to give the direction, but next week, you can abstain next week when we
Alright,
actually vote on the
okay.
actual.
Yep.
Councilor Flood. Councilor Granessi.
Yes.
Councilor McGuckin.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. 5.5 towards 0. Just kidding.
What are you saying behind my back? What?
All right, and then last, we have another guest here. Chief, do you have any information you want to share with us this evening, or is there anything? On the K-9 from last week, is there any questions that we have for the chief
I
while he's
know,
here?
exciting. We're getting a dog.
I'm all set right now.
Anyone have any questions while the chief's here?
What?
No? You sound unsure.
What about you? Do you have questions? for us?
They answer my questions. No.
He answered mine too.
I think if we can do it, it's a great thing, so.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other business, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
What about the roof of next week?
So,
Did I miss something?
yeah, no. Motion by Councilman McGuckin to adjourn, seconded by Council Flood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hi.
Ah, glory, glory.
You did two.